Hi everyone, thanks for joining us. We are very excited about this webinar at CSI, and I think secretly this project is one of our favourite projects at the Centre for Social Impact. So I am on this webinar with a teacher from Randwick Primary School, and his name is Daniel Pozarik, and we're also very lucky to have two Randwick Primary School students with us, Kate and Indy. So I'll just hand over to them very quickly to say hi and introduce themselves.
Hello, my name's Daniel Pozarik. I am a classroom teacher at Randwick Public School.
Hand over to Kate.
My name's Kate Prendeville and I'm a student from 4P.
Hi, I'm Indy. I'm okay as well, and I'm so nervous.
I'm really nervous too, girls. So
we're saying we're all just pretending that we're talking to our mum,
yep.
Just like on Mother's Day yesterday. Happy Mother's Day to everyone for yesterday, all the mothers out there. Okay, so let's get started talking about this exciting social impact leadership program for primary schools. So it all began last year. In 2019, actually, before we go into that, before we get started, I just want to let everyone know that we're going to have question time at the end, definitely, because we want this to be as much of a conversation as possible. And we'd love you to all get involved and make everyone feel comfortable and confident. But also we're going to have the chat enabled during the webinar. So if you have anything you'd like to say or a question you think you might forget or a comment you'd like to make on something we've just said, please put it in the chat function and we'll be monitoring that as well. Okay, so let's get started. So yeah, it all happened, as I said, last year, and we got this very exciting email from Daniel. As he said, he's a classroom teacher at Randwick Primary School, and he got in touch with us to ask us about the possibility of designing a new kind of leadership program for primary schools. And so I'll hand over to Daniel to talk about where that came from and what his intentions were for the program.
Okay, so this started at the I guess the beginning of last year. We had a presentation at school about student voice and how important student voice is to motivation, to engagement, to everything. I know that when people listen to me, I feel more motivated, more engaged, and it's just very important. But we're asked the question, how much student voice do we actually have at Randwick? How much do we listen to the students, like really in a meaningful way? And how much do we let them guide the future directions of the school? And I thought there was room for growth there. And the idea kind of knocked around in my head for a while. And I got chatting to Jodie Littlewood, or Jodie, who is Indy's mother, at our Harmony Day lunch. And we talked for about an hour about different ideas on ways that children could have a positive impact in their local area. And the idea grew and grew for quite a while. And I had a chat with Ros Dixon, whose daughter Isabel I taught many years ago, also about the same idea. And through various circumstances, we were put in contact with CSI. Also, from the school's perspective, the Department of Education launched a new high potential and gifted education policy. And this had a number of domains, like intellectual, creative, and there was a new one called social emotional, like people who are gifted or show high potential as social emotional people. And these are things like advanced social and communication skills, empathy, looks at consequences, implications of decisions, and social justice advocacy. And we thought we could design a program around that catered for all these things, that gave students more voice, more decision-making process, and that like intentionally taught them how to be good people. And I think that that's something that we can teach everyone. It's like some people are born that way, but other people, everyone can be taught that they can be good people in the world and have a positive impact in their local community. And that's kind of where the project grew from. I was given a lot of freedom by our school executive to pursue that. And I think that's kind of where we got to the email to CSI to work together on developing this program to teach children how to have a positive impact in their local community in a very intentional way, not just by building something or selling something, but actually looking at the complexity of social issues and coming at them in a very structured way, in order to have the most positive effect and also have the most meaningful experience for the children. And the project was so important from the outset that the project would be guided by the children, that they would make the decisions, that they would choose the areas of need, that they would drive it forward, and that I would be there just to shepherd it, to guide it.
Thank you. That was such a great overview. So you got in touch with us, and then there was a very generous family foundation, a private foundation, that agreed to fund the program. And so we found ourselves, so you and I found ourselves at Randwick Primary School talking about how this would take shape. And at CSI, we have our flagship undergraduate course for, it's a general education course, so anyone from any faculty can take it. It's an undergraduate course, so we usually have first years joining us, but we can also have, third and fourth year students. And that course is called COM 1000, Creating Social Change from Innovation to Impact. And so when you got in touch with me, I saw the opportunity on so many levels, because I think for a lot of people listening, we could probably all relate to the idea of leadership at primary schools being something along the lines of a popularity contest, or how much influence you can have over another person. And that's how leadership's really been portrayed in popular culture. How much can you influence someone else to do what you'd like to get them to do? And we saw this at CSI as such an opportunity to reshape how primary school students experience leadership as not a popularity contest, but as a contribution to your local community. So we decided to base the Social Impact Leadership Program on our undergraduate CSI COM 1000 program, Creating Social Change. And you'll see here in the image on this screen that we start off looking at systems thinking. So identifying root causes of a problem, not just the symptoms. Then we go into a blueprint for change, utilising systems tools such as mapping and strategies, collaboration, and measuring impact. And I've got to say, Kate and Indy, when we were designing this, we were so curious as to how the students would receive it, because we teach this to university students. They've finished their HSC. And we're thinking, will students in primary schools be able to get these concepts, because they're really high-level concepts? So I'll now hand back over to Daniel, and maybe Kate and Indy, you'd like to say something as well, and we'll talk about the process of applying. So an overview of the program from, let's go back here. Yeah, let's go back, and then we'll go back to talk about what the program was about. So I'd love to hear about applications, because I can see here on the chat that someone said, are you only focused on hearing from high potential and gifted students? Because we know that this is something that this is important for all students. We would like this leadership program to be available for everyone. So why don't you talk a little bit about your application process and how you decided which students would be involved?
So it's a really interesting question about hearing from high potential and gifted students. There are students who perform very well in school, and I think they are labeled as gifted or talented early on, but there are so many quiet ones who have so much inside of them that until you ask them the right question, they won't give you an amazing answer. So the program was really focused on finding those hidden, quiet ones who don't perform, who don't get 100 out of 100 on a test, and who don't get the academic award, the ones who really care. Those are the ones we wanted to find.
And sorry, can I also say, not often leaders are pegged as the ones that are the loudest?
Yeah.
or the ones who are the most extroverted, outgoing, confident, and that's not always the case when it comes to leadership.
And it was very true with this. So we opened applications for all students in years 2 to 6, and their application had to show us their vision for a better world. And I borrowed CSI's thing there, CSI's motto. They had to show us a vision for a better world, something that they wanted to see changed, and how they would change it, and what would be the outcome of that change. And they could show it in literally any way they wanted. They could sing a song, they could do a dance, they could make an animation. And we got an enormous range of applications. So we had keynote presentations, PowerPoints, movies, an animation using Scratch, which is coding software. We had an interactive ebook, posters, comics, a stop motion video. We had a watercolor painting. The range was incredible, and across topics like flood and drought, soft plastics, bees, Save Yarra Bay, women's rights, bushfires, rising sea levels, violence against women, homeless awareness, climate change, fossil fuels, period poverty, loneliness, the importance of love, and that's just to name a few. It was overwhelming.
Wow. So maybe we could hear from Kate and Indy now. Kate, how did you hear about the program, and how did you decide what your topic would be to make a better world?
Well, I first found out about the program because me and Indy were in Mr. Pozarik's class last year, and he was talking about like this big project he wanted to do. And like once we went into like our year 4 classes and we found out what it was, we thought like this was a really fun, exciting opportunity. But I did want to try out, but I was very stuck on my application because I wanted to do something different that not many people would want to do. And I thought with my mum and my grandma for a bit, and then it went back to an older man that we see on the streets. And he's not homeless. He lives around on our block, but he's always by himself and he always wants someone to chat to. So I thought I'd do something a bit about him. And I do get very lonely often. So that's where my loneliness topic came from.
Beautiful, thank you. And what was your idea when you had to come up with an idea to change the world? So your topic was loneliness, and what was your idea? How did you present it? Was it a PowerPoint? Was it the painting?
I just wrote it down on a piece of paper. Something really simple that I could work on and erase. And like the way I did it, like what I wanted to change was like maybe just give someone a compliment, like say, oh, I really like your hat, I really like your dress, those are nice shoes, and just like have like a more of a wide open community, because I go to my cousin's house a lot. It's out west in like Wilberforce somewhere, it's out in the country, and basically everyone knows each other, and like they come over for barbecues like on many weekends, and I just thought, well, we never do that, so I think that could be a start. So yeah.
I love that. Thank you, Kate. Indy, what about you? What was your application about?
Mine was about mental health because well, at my old preschool they did a thing called the blue tree, where they wrap a tree in rainbow and then they wrap one in blue, and when they're sad or when they're lonely, they go to the blue tree and there's a bunch of rocks that have like joy, sadness, worry, and if they can't talk, they show which rock they feel. Yeah.
And so sorry, go on.
I did a video presentation, but then I also did an interview with one of the owners of my preschool, like my old preschool teacher.
Wow. So Daniel, the question is, how did you choose which, and we should point out that it wasn't part of a normal class. So it's not yet part of the curriculum as such. Is that correct?
That's correct. There would be a future goal to integrate this kind of program into a normal cycle of teaching, so all children will be able to access it. But currently it's run as a hybrid lunchtime program, and then it goes into class time. So it's a hybrid withdrawal break time program.
Mm-hmm. And so you chose the students, and then we should go back to talking about the program itself, just a bit of an overview. So I talked about the core steps of the CSI program, but here is the course roadmap. And I know it's in really tiny text here, but you can sort of get an idea of what we cover. And we sort of wanted to present it as an adventure. So we didn't want it to feel like it was just this big, because we do talk about complex problems and how intractable they can be and how difficult they can be. But we wanted to present it a little bit like a treasure hunt or an adventure quest. And so that became the theme of the program. And I need to acknowledge Pam Buenash. So she can't be on the webinar today, unfortunately, but she was, she led the graphics and the design of this. And I think that's incredibly important in terms of student engagement. Kate and Indy, did you like the graphics that were part of the presentations and the roadmap that you can see here? Did that make it easier for you to understand?
A lot easier.
Yeah.
Easier. I wouldn't understand any of it, like if it wasn't presented that way.
Oh, Pam will be so happy to hear that.
Like when Mr. Pozarik was talking about it, we were like, oh God, how are we going to understand this? Like, that's so complicated. But like, once you see it written down, like in that type of way, it's much easier to understand.
Yeah, so we do a similar thing in the undergraduate course, but it was interesting for me as a university lecturer to realise once we understood the importance of graphics and design in learning for primary school students, I actually think that applies for all of us. I don't know about you guys listening, but if something's presented in a visually appealing way that makes sense, it makes it so much easier for me to understand. So it's actually, rather than us designing something for primary school students, this has actually become something that I think undergraduate students will love as well. So they're weekly classes, as you said, of they go over lunchtime and then into a further class. That's about 70 minutes. And what I love from your feedback is that you said that you still feel like there's not enough time, even in the 70-minute session.
Nowhere near enough time, right, girls?
No, we'd always be trying to rush it.
Yeah, and we wouldn't be able to do like all the fun activities, like a bunch of activities. Like to get to the important part.
The conversations that we had that were driven by the students and their questions were passionate and interesting, and it's hard to. The content was fantastic and complex, and we got through it, and it helped us learn. But the ideas that we accessed through the program were incredible. Like I came out of every session completely energized. It was.
I think there was a Karen. Karen raised her hand. Karen, did you want to ask a question? If you want to unmute yourself. No, maybe she accidentally pressed the button. Okay, but if you do, please just write in the chat. I've got the chat in front of me, so if you'd like to ask a question, go ahead and write something down. So yeah, they're really meaty topics, aren't they? You know, we're not pulling any punches here. So we're talking about things like wicked problems, and also Kate and Indy, I'd love your feedback on this, because we were sort of thinking a lot of the complex issues that we discuss at a university level, they're quite intense topics. You know, they're confronting topics. They can sometimes be uncomfortable topics, and I can't actually believe, like I'm so surprised, pleasantly surprised, to see how you have all been able to respond to those topics in such a mature way. Do you feel like they're things, you know, you're talking about loneliness, mental health, climate change, plastic pollution, Daniel, I know you mentioned. Do you think that they're things that you had thought of before? Are they things that you just generally know about, or is this something that the program introduced you to? Indy?
Well, I know about most of these things, like pollution and mental health and loneliness. I know about lots of it. So.
That's great. Daniel, did you want to say something?
Two things. I remember we had quite an intense discussion about landmines. There was a section about landmines and a person who'd had a profound impact on landmines, and that discussion was fairly intense. But I think probably our study of wicked problems and the realization that these are things that we can't fix was quite a profound moment in the club. I remember that was probably one of our quietest endings, that we have to come to terms with these are problems that are here to stay, and that we can only have an impact.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, some parts of complex problems can be fixed, and I think the challenge is being able to deconstruct a complex problem to work out what are the things that are fixable, and then what are the things that we need to maybe work with and, as you say, have an impact on. And I like to see complex problems a little bit like relationships or people. We don't want to look at each other as things to fix. We want to look at these things as people, as things we have relationship to. And I think it's the same with complex social problems. So, okay, so that's the overview of the program itself. And I should also say the program learning outcomes were important. Like, we wanted to align the school's idea of leadership with making a positive contribution to the community. We've said that, and to evaluate key local issues. So that the idea here in terms of the outcome of the program is really to shape students to be ambassadors for community issues, to understand how to design interventions, social interventions in response to these complex local problems. But as you and I remember the first time we met, Daniel, and we sat down and we were talking about this as a social impact leadership program, and we realised the opportunity we would have to actually frame thinking, not just about social issues, but just thinking in general. And I shared my story of my first ever job after I finished uni was as a criminal lawyer. And that had a huge impact on me because I had never done any training in how working on complex issues would emotionally affect you. And so we saw this as an opportunity to shape the way that young people respond to just the work itself, regardless of the issues, regardless of their impact, just how you might emotionally deal with it. And I mean, what better time in history to be able to shape thinking and to respond to the need for resilience and uncertainty. So I was thinking that as all of this has unfolded around us this year. So we decided to shape, in complex social problems, we decided to create these characters that you'll meet. So if you think of the idea of an adventure quest, so this program is an adventure quest. And as you embark on your quest, you meet these different characters. And Indy, I'm reminded of your experience at preschool, how you were talking about the different emotions, the different rocks. So we wanted to show the students that, yes, when you start working on complex social problems, and just like we do at CSI, yes, we feel joy and hope and inspiration each time we're working on something. But there's also the challenge underneath that. There's the feeling of, am I even having an impact? Am I making any difference? I feel powerless. Sometimes you can feel sad, you can feel angry. And so we wanted to give students the emotional toolbox way forward alongside the working on. Did you like that? I wanted to share it. I couldn't do it on Zoom here, but did you like the slide where you could click on the doors? You know, that little presentation?
Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah, so there was in I think one of the early units, there was a particular slide in the presentation, and there were 3 doors. One was a positive door, one was the door of challenges, and one was the way forward. And so you click on the positive door and you see all these characters come out, and everyone can relate. I mean, if you have a great day at work, you meet those positive characters. If you have a challenging day at work, you meet the challenging characters. And so it was giving you the emotional toolbox of gratitude and resilience and empathy to move forward working on these complex problems. Okay, so let's go on. All right, so Daniel, what we didn't talk about before was actually your experience of curating the program and choosing the students.
It's been absolutely fantastic. It's been really challenging and engaging. It's definitely new ground for me as a teacher to kind of do something like this. Selecting students to join the program was fairly complicated. We had a lot of applications, and also opening up from years 2 to 6 presented even more challenges, but I wanted as many students to have the opportunity as possible. We went back again to the Department of Education's high potential and gifted education policy and mapped out a few indicating factors across a few of the domains, focusing on the intellectual, high potential and gifted, creative, social, emotional, and then just like across all the domains, and kind of like a checker box thing.
Mm-hmm.
We looked at different applications and saw what they demonstrated those things, and just kind of selected from there. We had a lot more girls than boys, like a lot.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, my son's in year 2. I'm just wondering if I'm just thinking about the applications, and yeah, it's something I think that is on a lot of parents' minds. How can I, integrate this into my own child's education? And to that point, Nicola has a question for you, Daniel. Do you have any advice for parents who would love to see a program get off the ground in their kids' schools? And what sorts of resources, like time and cost, did you need?
Like with anything, it needs somebody to drive it. That's like the most important thing at this stage. It's not integrated into a curriculum yet, which means there would be time off a syllabus, which some schools are willing to do, other schools aren't. My goal is to grow this project beyond this one group of 16 children and find a way to integrate it into a syllabus and grow it to something that can be taught across a whole year level, where they learn English and maths and history and all that stuff, but through the lens of being taught how to have a positive impact in their local area.
Yeah, and we should say that you're a bit of a hero. Like, you've started a newspaper at your school as well. So you're somebody who is a real ambassador for student voice in schools. So I think the first step to the question of how do you get it off the ground in your schools, you need to find a champion of someone who cares enough about the program to really drive it, because as you say, it's not part of the curriculum yet. Okay, so there's all the questions are starting to flow in now. It's amazing. So I have to just go up a little bit. There's a few questions. Okay. Someone has asked who was the family foundation who sponsored the program? What was the budget? Is that something we'll get in touch with them offline?
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah, okay. And the next one, were all the students, we've sort of covered this before, were all the students higher potential, and did you include emotionally challenged students? Now, I think this is an issue because it's not part of the curriculum yet, that this is something obviously you had to make available to students who were interested, because it is really an extracurricular activity. Did you open it to everyone?
Everyone.
Yeah, so everyone was able to apply. Yes. And then the way that you sifted through the applications was whether they met the criteria for the higher, sorry, what do you call it? In higher education.
For high potential students, specifically in the social emotional range, these children have a strong sense of moral reasoning and justice, passionate about social justice issues, have good backwards mapping abilities, like see an outcome and then figure out the steps towards them, show empathy. And a lot of the children some of the children who are in the program are your kind of classic high performing students, but a bunch of them are not. They're not students who get selected for the normal special extension enrichment programs. We had a good balance of all students there. And that was really important to me. I just didn't want to have cherry pick the same students over and over again who get picked for these things. I wanted it to be as open as possible.
And then, so basically what you're saying is Kate and Indy must be pretty special if they're part of this bunch. So, All right, so then we'll go on to the next one. There's another question. Can you talk about the sex difference? Was it interest or capacity to express ideas? So you mentioned earlier that there are a lot more girls than boys.
Just a lot more girls applied. There are only a few boys applied. It was at the beginning of the year that we opened up. That might have had a difference. It's always quite busy. Sometimes things just go down those lines. It's something that happens at schools. There's probably a study to be done somewhere there, but I don't know.
Yeah, and this goes to the next question as well. Why do you think girls are more likely to apply? Is it reflective of the language or feel of the program? Is there a version of this that could be adapted to attract more boys? Look, these are such interesting questions because this is a pilot, isn't it? Yeah. You and I, we sat down. I went back to CSI. There was a team of people that we consulted at CSI. We looked at the course and I must say, in terms of our undergraduate program at a university level for this course, it is completely equal when it comes to the sex difference. It's, I would say, 50-50 split. There is just as much interest in it at university from both sexes. So potentially there is potentially something we could look at as another kind of version that would attract boys. Again, there might be a different experience at a different school. Or could it be that they're, in terms of social and emotional learning, because that's what this was geared towards potentially, is there a different maturation process? I mean, all of those things are, we can go back and think about the design of this for sure. Clearly, Daniel is a key role and trainer for other public schools, and I would suggest principals should be encouraged to send students to observe and learn from him so they can work with CSI to implement them in their own school. Daniel is definitely a hero champion for these changes. So thank you, Daniel, and thank you for that comment. And then, is it possible to deliver the COM 1000 Creating Social Change as a secondary school program for student voice students? Yes, 100%. This is something that we have implemented in a primary school setting because of Daniel's interest and Randwick Primary School's interest, but this is definitely something that could be applied more broadly at any school really, and CSI is really keen to scale this program in different settings. Okay, so someone has a really interesting response. They're saying the competitive application process and reference to high potential and gifted feels uncomfortable to me. What's the objective? Our vision is to spread it to many more kids, but why not start with a more mixed group?
Great question. It should be available to everyone. It's a pilot program. We needed to see how it would work with a small group of children. Teaching it to a whole year cohort would take a huge amount of time out of our already busy program. We need to train teachers to deliver it. If I did it myself with a small group of children, I'd be able to teach other teachers how to do it. Mm-hmm. But also we just have a new department policy and we work for the Department of Education. So we kind of go along those lines.
It was part of your brief, as you said at the start, the brief was to design a program sort of for around student voice for these particular learners. But yes, as we're talking about it and its application feels so much more universal than just one small group of students, I can see that, yes, it needs to apply to it does apply to everyone, and so therefore should be offered to everyone. Someone said a fair few kids didn't apply because they'd lose a lunchtime.
100%.
Which is fair enough.
Yeah.
Someone, sorry, I'm just going back. Let's go back. There's so many comments, guys. Okay.
Hey,
amazing. Yes.
Hi everyone. Do you want me to ask the questions? That might be easier.
Oh yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
It's really hard when there's loads of questions to try and get through them all.
Yeah.
Lots of lovely comments, and thank you everyone for those. And you feel free to read the chat yourselves. So another question from Selena. What other community outreach programs are currently in place in schools? For example, volunteering, social responsibility programs. How different would this program be? Do you guys know any other examples?
Indy, is there anything that we do at Randwick Public School that serves community outreach?
Quite a few things. Wow. Well, we do if a kid has something from their family and they bring it into school, then sometimes they work on it for a bit. Like they work on that. But if they don't, then the school usually makes one, because we usually have something that we work on every year.
We work with little care packs, right?
Yeah.
Yep, that's one of the ones that we work with. And different students bring in different things. Sometimes they sell lip balm or something to raise money for something, but it's not something we do in a super intentional way. We have our what's it called? SRC, and they raise money through Mufti Days and things like that. But yeah, not a lot.
I'd also add to that, sorry, Rhonda, with most schools, I think there are social justice programs that exist for sure, and there are volunteering programs. This was a little bit different in the sense that we actually wanted to teach students to address complex social problems across the board and then design their own social innovation. So we wanted to actually align the idea of leadership with contribution to community. And so I think at the moment when schools introduce the amazing social justice programs that they do, and I think all schools have something like this in place, there's an expectation that students just assume what to do or how to design something, or an assumption that volunteering or giving money in and of itself will have an impact or have a desired impact. So we wanted to actually create a more holistic program where it's actually you address the root causes of complex social problem in your community, you map it out, you work in a team to come up with your own social innovation, you work out what's already been done, so what's been done by government, what's been done by not-for-profits, what's been done by business in your community, and then work out a way where you can find a gap to best address that social problem from your perspective. And then the final step is actually implementing that in the school. So it might be that that comes in the form of volunteering, giving money, some kind of social justice program, but we've got those underpinning principles for then students to go out and design a social innovation pretty much in any context. And so I think that's what sets this program apart from your standard social justice programs.
The next one's more of an idea, but you could have done it. It must have been amazing looking at the applications. Was it curated as an exhibition at the school to share with teachers and parents and other students? From Heather.
That's the best idea I've heard. I love it.
Thanks, Heather. And then a question, great question. How long did the course run for? 1 term or year?
The idea was that we'd run it for 2 terms, that we'd kind of spend the first term developing the knowledge to design an innovation and developing that kind of background understanding of how complex the problems are, doing research. And we got up to the point where we had 2 groups, each focused on a different idea, and they were just starting to design this social innovation. So Kate and Indy were focusing on, girls, go.
I should go through.
Mental health.
Yeah. And what specifically?
Like how it affects other people.
Yeah, well, I think when you guys are looking, we're starting to look at crisis shelters.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And do you remember what the problem is with crisis shelters in our area? This is going back a little while.
There are only like 2 or 3. There's
not very many.
And not many people know about them, so they don't know where they can go or what to do.
Yeah.
And I think I met with Dr. Marjorie O'Neill, who's our local member, to look at the issues in our area. And one of them was the lack of crisis-specific shelters. There's no crisis-specific shelters in our local area. And I think that was one of the things that we were going to be focusing on. And we had a different group focused on plastic pollution and beach pollution. Yeah.
And you'll see here that I've put in the background some of the photos you shared, Daniel, with me. And when we were sharing things like systems mapping in our presentations, I was sitting there with Pam, we're thinking, oh, is this too hard? Will the students be able to do complex systems mapping? So to see these maps in action, I just can't tell you, Kate and Indy, how excited it makes me, because we can actually see that not only were you able to do it or understand it, you're really putting it into practice here. Like, honestly, I see these maps from university students. So you're amazing doing it. So one of the examples was domestic violence. Is that the one that you guys were working on, or is you were talking about crisis shelters in relation to mental illness? Is that right?
Yeah, we were talking about mental health. That was
Mental health.
And like what we could do to raise awareness.
Okay. And then Daniel, did you want to speak about the other projects that were going on?
So the other one was focused on plastic pollution and beach pollution, and how we can prevent single-use plastics from entering our local beaches, which is very much part of our local community here in Randwick.
And we should say that part of the program was very much around community consultation. So the idea of going and asking people, doing some studies and doing some research on what's currently happening and how they could best make an impact. And here are some maps and ideas in relation to the plastic pollution as well. And what has the school done so far? Just let everyone have a look at that. The plastic pollution.
Keeping the focus in our local area was very important from the outset. A lot of the programs that we do are for communities that are not our own, and contributing to communities far away is fantastic and it's important, but I think it might teach children the idea that we don't have problems right here, and that the place that we live in is fine. But also when we contribute to communities that aren't our own, we don't get to see the impact of what we've done. We don't get to see the change. So it's very far removed. Like dropping $2 in a bucket is very different to designing something for a place that I see every day. And that's kind of one of the things that we wanted to achieve.
Yeah, so let's talk about evaluation, because you raised that there. So we wanted to actually build evaluation into every student project. So they needed to evaluate the impact that they had made. But obviously we wanted to evaluate the pilot itself. And I feel like this webinar is helping us do that, just because some of the questions that have been asked, which is great. But here are some of our metrics that we had in terms of our program evaluation. So you can see here the number of students involved, the number of innovations designed, the impact of those innovations, and then in terms of CSI evaluations, how we can expand the program, and then eventually, and this is the dream, Daniel, right, to integrate it into the curriculum.
Yes.
Eventually for everyone. But we have the student survey here. So an understanding of leadership. So to begin with, Kate and Indy, how did you understand leadership before? I know this is a big question because a lot of adults wouldn't even know what to answer for this one, so I'll put you on the spot here. But how did you think of leadership before this program?
To me, it was kind of like a popularity contest. Like, if you weren't popular and not many people liked you, well, you're not a good leader. Or like you have to be like a teacher's favorite or something.
Mm-hmm. And how do you think about it now?
I think it's someone that can put everyone's ideas in to make one big idea, friendly, confident, and responsible. But just make sure they everyone else in their group also has fun.
That's important. Indy, what about you? What did you think of leadership before?
Before, I thought it was just like someone who knew how to control everyone, like who like stop everyone from screaming, and who could get people to like do this and do that. But now I feel like it's sort of like someone who can make something with everyone's ideas, and who can do things that not everyone else could do because they were so confident, things like that.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And so we also wanted to, in terms of the impact of this specific program, we wanted students to be able to identify problems in their own community, as you say, Daniel, rather than having an us and them approach to social justice or social impact. And I think this has definitely had the effect of raising awareness about local issues.
100%.
Yeah. And we've got to say, the pilot has been interrupted. Like, a lot of our lives have been interrupted by what's going on at the moment. So we're not through it. They're not all the way through this pilot. So this is a work in progress, and we welcome everyone's ideas. And to that point, Rhonda, are there any more questions?
Yeah, there's a few questions actually. So we've had a question around asking if you needed volunteers to get this off the ground.
Thank you. At this stage, the students are doing absolutely incredible work and really driving the whole project forward. When we get back together as a school and as a group, we'll be able to reevaluate what's happening next. But at this stage, I know, maybe send me an email.
I think they were more keen to know if you did need volunteers. Like, they wanted to know, to start a program like this, would you recommend having volunteers there? I'm not sure if they were putting their hand up to volunteer.
It was a theoretical question.
Running a program like this, or starting a program like this, is very time intensive. So maybe, don't know.
Were many of the parents involved in helping set it up?
I had parent advocates.
Yeah.
Kind of championing the project, who kind of gave me a lot of support, but given the complexity of it, it's mostly been Ali and myself.
Yeah.
But quite a few parents helping out, specifically. Jodie Littlewood and Rose Dixon have been amazing.
A few people have asked multiple questions, so I'm sorry I can't get to them all. We'll just get to people's first question. So a question from Angela. What would you say to school leadership or other adults who might argue that social issues like domestic violence and others are too heavy for children?
Oh, I want to hear the answer to this.
Do you think children are underestimated?
I 100% agree with that. I think people out there look at children and think they're stupid because they're small. They're not. Children are incredible, and they are very sensitive and very knowledgeable, and children are underestimated all the time. Heavy issues. So this is because I work for the Department of Education and we're a government school, things can get a bit tricky here. When we sent out permission notes to the parents for children to join, we told them that they would be encountering sensitive issues, and that we deal with it in a meaningful but honest way. Kate and Indy, what do you think about some of the things we talked about?
I think some people might find it too heavy, but then some people think like it's not that big of a deal, because some people think that they don't understand it well enough to know how heavy it actually is. Yeah, that's what I think.
And some people just don't want to talk about it. Like, at the start, I was like, kind of laugh it off and not really think about it. But now I'm kind of going in and like thinking about it like real deep.
Were any of the sessions upsetting for you?
Quite a few, especially the landmine ones. Yeah.
But yeah, again, because we're a government school, we have to be careful with some of the issues and how we deal with them. Having those slides, the different characters was very good. The joy, the sadness, those ones. And we could kind of roll back and talk about those characters and different ways to experience things was very important. But yeah, it was it's a hard world out there. We've got to view it honestly.
And I think a lot of it is around managing expectations with these issues. And we have to do the same thing at a university level, where you'll say, we're going to talk about these issues. You may feel X, Y, and Z, and that's perfectly normal. If you do feel like this and you'd like some support around it, here are the networks you can reach out to. And so I think as long as you manage the expectations, when people do have those feelings arise, in their own minds, they have the ability to regulate and say, hold on, I was told that I might feel like this, so it's completely normal. I think the normalization of those feelings, and that's why it was so important to create those characters at the beginning and say, expect to feel like this, because adults feel like this when they're dealing with these issues as well.
There's just 2 questions. I'm just really conscious of time, but I think they're important questions. The first one is how can this be replicated, or does it require a CSI? And the second one, different person, but what happens now? Like, what happens at the end of the program? It's still running, but at the end of the program, what happens?
In terms of the end of the program, this is just the first iteration of it. My goal is to deliver proof of concept that you can teach children to have a positive effect in their local community, that we can raise awareness, that we can reframe leadership, that we can teach the skills on how to deal with a chaotic world, and we can show that it works, and that I can seek more substantial funding to design a program that's integrated into a school curriculum and teach it to more students and more students and more students and more students.
And to the rollout question, from CSI's perspective, we're really excited to evaluate the pilot, so have this rollout. And we've actually, just from staff members and their local networks, we've had people say, we want this program at our school, we really want it. I have that for my own son's school. I want this program at his school. But it's really important, obviously, that we evaluate the pilots ongoing now at Randwick, and then we can improve it and then work out how to roll it out. So we want this program to be as good as it can, the best it can be. And so we'll be working with Daniel to finish the pilot once everyone's back at school, and then evaluate that and go from there.
That's all for the questions. There were probably a few we didn't get to, and I apologise for that, but it is 12:30, but I'll let you wrap up, Ali.
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you firstly to Kate and Indy and Daniel for joining us. You've honestly made this so much fun for me, and it's incredible to see. So I had planned to come to one of your sessions just before everything was shut down. So I was really excited to come meet you in person. So I will definitely be meeting you in person once we're all back up and running, back at school. So I'm looking forward to that. Thanks for joining us. You were both amazing. And Daniel, thanks for all the work you've done on this. It's been an incredible collaboration from CSI's perspective. So I hope you've enjoyed it as well.
I love it. Thank you so much. Thanks, girls.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.